I'm gonna try to stop twisting around in my seat like,
Oh, you're
like a
fine.
fidgety.
It's not making any sounds, so that's the
Yeah, I'm
important
just gonna
thing.
look like this constantly in the stream.
Hey everyone, this is the Q&A. That's gonna be the intro now. See what
My
you just did?
restless leg syndrome.
Hey everyone, this is the it's been a while, but this is the next episode of our Q&A session. We're bringing it back. I'm here with Brendan.
Hey guys.
We have a bunch of questions to answer. We have some tea that we're gonna enjoy. Yes.
Eat more pie, folks.
Yes.
It's important for your health.
Today's a big day for us. A lot of announcements and things going on. So we figured we would sit down and answer some questions, some things that people might have on their minds. Yeah, it should be good. So you've been on this before, but I think you were on the first one. I'm just gonna start.
It's been a while.
Yes, I'm gonna start rolling through the questions. I guess let's do the most important one right now. That people are thinking about, which is today we announced our release date for 1.0. Some people might see that date and think, oh, that's a different date than what I expected. And so I wanted to just sort of address that on the Q&A because I'm sure people are asking that question. I didn't necessarily get that because when we asked for questions, people didn't know that this was happening. And so now we're here and we should address it. So we moved our date to February 6th, which we're really excited about. What goes into like that? What went into that decision for us?
The bottom line is the quality of the game that we're delivering, right? Announcing a date ever is terrifying for a developer, if you're not in marketing at least. So the marketing people always want you to announce a date like before you just thought of the game, announce the date.
Yes.
Because they want to plan everything like a year out. Meanwhile, the developers are like, until the last line of code is written and the last piece of art submitted, you don't feel comfortable because things can always go wrong. And so, of course, I don't want to say things went wrong, but of course, things take longer than we expect.
Yes.
And around about the October timeframe, we started to feel like we were probably going to be able to finish all the features that we wanted to get in the game. I was pretty confident of that. The problem was it was going to come in very last minute at that point, which meant that we weren't going to be able to put in place the kind of quality assurance practices that we now want to do. You know, that's how the early access launch went. It went right down to the wire.
Right.
And it shipped with a lot of bugs. And some of that is, we got forgiven for some of that because it was an early access title. Clearly, that's not going to fly anymore.
Right.
So we have practices in place to try to correct that. We have an in-house QA team, and they require a certain amount of time, and to really hammer on the game, flush the bugs out so that we're aware of them, and then we need the time to address those issues.
Right.
And for us, that's about a month to 6 weeks, and we were going to really eat into a lot of that time, and we just made the decision to. There's two ways when you're up against a deadline that, if nothing changes, is not going to be met. There's two ways to address it. You can either shift the deadline back, or you can cut features. And we had cut some things, but you get to a point where you're going to start cutting things that are just going to really take away from the game, and you're just making a decision between, is it important to get the game out at a particular time because you want to make it, you want to be there so that the game can be purchased for Christmas. People can buy it as gifts for their friends. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
But it's a trade-off for us between that convenience for the consumer and that same consumer just having a higher quality product.
Right.
And so we ultimately decided that we had reached the limit of features that we could cut, and so we had to move the date. And it was, that's always a bit sad, but also it's a relief for the development team. It means that they don't want to. It means that they didn't have to crunch hard. That's the third thing. I should have said that there's. I didn't even bring up the third option, which a lot of game developers take, which is you just start to crunch really hard.
Yeah.
And you start to work. You start to put in way more hours, and your days get longer and longer. We've never ever mandated that anybody work like that here, and we don't want to. So we elected to move the date instead of tell people that they're going to have to put in 12-hour days and work weekends. And we're pretty proud of that. We never want to mandate that people slave to hit any kind of a deadline.
Yeah. Well, I think also that happens at anywhere you work. There's going to be times where there's stressful moments, but having that be a part of the actual culture of how you get over the finish line isn't something that hasn't happened. I'm sure there are people who have felt like, oh man, I had a particularly long day, even yourself, right? But that being a mandated thing in order to get to the finish line is not something that So what ended up happening is we had a lot of things that we wanted to keep putting into the game. When we look at the original, I was actually updating the Steam page, and I was looking at all the things that are on that list that were supposed to be in 1.0, and we actually added to that saying like, oh, now we're going to have all of these other features that weren't necessarily part of our vision for the 1.0 thing. It actually made it grander and more awesome. So like when we say that we cut stuff, we definitely I want to sort of clarify that a lot of that stuff was sort of like on the edge of being in, and then we decided, oh, we'll do it in 1.0, right? We'll do it after 1.0.
I mean, it clarifies the nothing that would, I want to say nothing went away, but things move around.
Yes.
And so things that we might have considered important to get in before the 1.0 date were getting shifted into updates that were going to come in next year.
Ultimately, the 6 weeks is going to mean that we have a much better product for people who are playing the game, whether they're early access or new people. And that trade-off just seemed like a pretty easy decision. Actually, no. It was a very tough decision, but I think we want to look back and have a great launch for our people who are playing the game, and that 6 weeks, people won't remember that 6 weeks. They'll remember the awesome product or the bad product, and we don't want to be in that category. So
yeah. Again, this is the debate between developers and marketers about like whether to announce the date.
Yes. So what you're saying, all of that to say, this is all my fault.
Yeah,
and that's
totally.
okay.
Blame Joe.
Yep, probably my fault. Okay, cool. So that's one of the questions that I wanted to answer. The other one is we announced another big thing today, which is we're increasing the price of the game. We've always talked on our Steam page and on Xbox. We've always talked about we would come and revisit the price of the game at a certain point and make a decision on what we felt was the right value for what we were putting into the package. What goes into like that part of the conversation?
What goes into the pricing conversation?
Yeah.
It's really you're looking at, it's really a feel thing, and it's about what you feel the quality of the content is, how many hours of gameplay you think people can get out of it. You're looking at kind of comparable titles, and you're also looking at the sort of value that you want to offer people for their early access experience.
Right.
So the game was $19.99 if you bought it in the US at launch.
Right.
For the early access title. And so the game that's going to come out at 1.0 is a lot more game, a lot more content, a lot higher quality content, and we feel that it justifies the higher price point. And we also feel that everyone who bought it during early access is the benefit of buying in early access and kind of putting up with the lesser game that has a lot of bugs, that has less content, is that you're buying at a discount. That's the sort of trade-off.
Right.
And I think that if we decided to keep the price at $19.99, of course anybody who's buying it later is gonna enjoy that. But all the people who bought it during early access, it's sort of a slight to them. Like this is it's almost like that's how I think early access should work. Is that the price, it should reflect the quality of experience that you're getting.
Right. The price increase that we had sort of slated that we have slated for next week, it's going to go up to $29.99. It's going to include a bunch of free stuff after the game launches. So the intention is to just keep updating the game without any sort of paid DLC or paid expansions after we get to that point. So that we factor that into the price of the game.
Yeah, the final. It's like you're getting. It's almost like you're getting a subscription to some sort of service, which is
Yeah.
giving you free stuff for a year. It's like when you buy software and if you buy enterprise software, you can never buy software.
Right.
You just pay for an annual license.
Yes.
And then they also separately charge you for annual support.
Right.
So annual support of Astroneer is free.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. I like it. And there's also another thing we announced today, which is cool, is that early access, people who play in early access are going to get an exclusive thing, which is awesome. So everyone who played early access, everyone up until the point that we reach 1.0, I think it's like a few hours before, if you own the game and play it before that point, you're going to get that suit. And then after that point, it won't be available for people in the game.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be like a little thank you.
yes, because I mean,
Have we said that it was a suit?
we have. Well, today we have.
Okay.
Yes. We hadn't said that before. We hadn't actually touched that subject at all, and it's been asked quite a bit. And so, yes, we announced today that there will be a suit for everyone who's in early access, and it's in the game right now. Yeah, I'm excited to just have people be like, look, this is my cool thing, and like I participated in this process with the team. And this is something that I can physically show off in the game to say I was here when we went through that process. So it's kind of a nice thing.
Is it going to be possible to get that suit for anybody else later on?
I don't. As of right now, it's exclusively for early access. So that part is kind of cool too. The other thing we announced today is having Terrain 2.0 finally in the build for people to test out, and so there will be plenty of that. We want people to go in there and break that. In order to just let us know where we're at, what we're missing, with what things we can improve as we go through bug fix. And
we can talk about Terrain 2.0 if you want.
yeah, I mean, I have like actual questions from fans. I feel like
let's do that.
Let's do those, and we can talk about Terrain maybe at the end. A new potato, this is the actual name, will be able to pack up platforms and other base modules. If so, when?
Where's the old potato?
I don't know. A new potato, like, okay.
So the question is, will we be able to pack up existing?
Yeah. So like you make a thing, you unpack it.
Yeah.
Will you be able to repack it?
Am I allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, please.
The short answer is yes.
Yes.
And we have a brand new item coming out that will let you do that. And you'll be able to, we call it the unpacker. And or the repacker. We call it the repacker.
Repacker, yes.
And it's a small tier 1 item. It'll fit in your backpack slots, and you'll be able to craft it pretty cheaply, and then just slam it on anything and press a button, and it will repack that thing into a crate.
Yes.
And it's sort of like a consumable item. You'll get to use it once, and then you have to build more of them.
Yes, I'm really excited about this because it's been asked about for a long time, and I think it's going to make interplanetary gameplay much more interesting because you'll be able to really think about, okay, I only have these many slots. What am I going to take with me? Before it was always like you had to bootstrap and then start all over again.
Yeah, like when we first put the crates in, I was so happy to see that visual and to build a bunch of things and then like throw them into storage on a rover train and like get that sense of having a caravan and like doing that like long expedition. It felt and looked awesome, and but of course you had one shot at that. It was sort of like that. The only user story where that really applied was you're building up a bunch of stuff to go deploy a new base once. So now you'll be able to repack up and kind of move more nomadically, and it'll cost some resources, but it's not too much of a hassle.
Yeah, much smaller cost. What is the future of Xbox controls and key binding? Keyboard and mouse on Xbox is now available publicly.
It is.
When could we, do we have intentions of seeing that? This is from Sir Tubbs.
Yeah, it's a little bit late in our cycle. I was really excited when they announced that to the developers. They announced it kind of back in March, and then I think a little bit later to the public. And I thought this is perfect, but it will take a little bit of time to put it in. It won't be too bad, but it is a bit of time, and at this stage in our development, it really would put the squeeze on something else, and so something else would fall out in order for one of our engineers, to spend the few days that it would take to properly implement that.
Right.
So, but it is something that I really want to patch in, and that'll come in a priority. Like it'll come in next year, and it'll come in with a priority that depends on the kind of feedback that we're getting.
So if you've been banging the drum on that, continue to do that, so that way we make sure that we can get an adequate view of how many people are actually interested in that thing. Mm-hmm. The next question is, and I get this every time from Brozelli, when can we name our saves? When are we going to be able to name our saves?
That'll be a 1.0 feature.
Awesome. Yes. I now remembering another thing I said. Most of the features that we're talking about, we talked about repacking. We're talking about naming saves. These are all 1.0 things. Those things didn't make it for the cutoff of being in this last update. We expanded on that. We can do that again. But yeah, that's a 1.0 thing. But we're really excited to be able to let people organize their saves and keep track of them. In the case of Brozelli, the person who's making these amazing, huge contraptions and the racetrack and the cool flat stuff that they're doing right now, they'll be able to keep track of those and keep those organized, which is really good. This is from Mochi Kun. Will wind turbines start working full power in storms? I mean, they are really windy in the storms. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, they will work. They will reflect the environment properly.
Yes.
And so storms will make them turn faster. Wind has gotten a little bit of a makeover internally. It's not available on Steam yet, but for the 1.0 launch, Wind will work a lot more intuitively. It was a bit, it was pretty slapdash before. Yeah. And it didn't really match. The big problem was that it didn't match the visual of what was going on. There was a sort of a wind, sort of natural wind pattern, like as if it was like a weather pattern happening on the planet, but it kind of just didn't match. There was no indication.
Right. You as a player just didn't know what that was.
Yeah, happening. Other than the wind turbines themselves, like nothing else reacted to it properly, and including the storms. The storms were kind of a separate thing. So now the wind is going to be more unified, and so it'll affect the environment. If you look around and you see leaves blowing and the grass kind of blowing, that will indicate stronger wind, and your wind turbines will affect it. Storms will affect the wind turbines as you would expect them to.
Yep.
And different planets will have different kind of global windiness. So that isn't to say that a certain planet will be constantly windy all the time.
Right.
But wind is going to be more effective on some planets versus others.
Yes. Cool. Yeah, I'm excited for those types of. That's another layer of the planet stuff that we haven't talked about, which is there will be different characteristics for planets that will actually impact gameplay, which is really cool. I'm excited for those. Okay, cool. I think that was mostly everything. We talked a little bit about the last question I had was from Iculus of the Sky today, which is we going to be squashing some bugs in 1.0, boys? Yes, that's where we're at right now. We're working on squashing and polishing and making sure that the game was really awesome, and the extra 6 weeks is going to be instrumental in that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did we miss talking about the kind of bug fixing cadence? Is that part of the stuff that got chopped out?
It is. We can talk about it. Let's do it. In the original version of this that actually worked, is I asked the question of the viewer saying, well, all this new stuff's happening, all these new things you're talking about that are slated for 1.0, how come they're just not in the game right now? Why can't we test them as early access users? Mm-hmm. And then you sort of went into why those things are separated.
Yeah, so I mean, if you take all the content that we delivered over the entire early access period through all the updates that we did, if we were able to just take what's in the game as it is now, and if we had just built all that stuff together and delivered it all in one shot, then we might not have arrived at the same product exactly, but for the same amount of content, we would have delivered that a lot faster,
right?
And probably in about half the time, or 60% or something like that, and that's just because the overhead. There's like a bureaucratic overhead and administrative overhead on maintaining that kind of quality and going through the release cycle every month or every 6 weeks.
Right.
And it was really good for the team in early access on one hand to kind of exercise that muscle of going through the release loop. So we are, we're used to having a QA period and a release lockdown, and we have our sort of best practices and branching strategies, and we go through certification. and that's old hat for us now. So it makes the 1.0 launch a lot less scary. It just looks like a big update that's a little bigger than what we're used to, but the motions are all the same. Just with a lot of extra weight put on the QA side.
Yes.
But it did mean that we could never diverge too far away from the stable product,
Right.
And get really experimental, because we're always having to kind of coalesce back into a shipping polished as much as we could make it
Right.
product, and that's just like the game at most studios is never like that. Like for most of its life up until the last 2 months, it's like barely playable. It's like broken every day.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden in the last 2 months, it like stitches together.
Yes.
Like I don't know, like T1000 reassembling, and then all of a sudden it's a finished, polished product, and it's like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
But it's just that the speed that you can move on features in that period where everything is broken, because you don't care that everything's broken, is just like breakneck compared to what we were able to do
Right.
In early access. And so that's what we're trying to achieve with this last couple of months before release. We just need to be able to do that, because there isn't a very clear line of incremental updates between where the Steam build is now and where 1.0 is going.
Right.
Because we're going to break save compatibility, the map, like all the environments are different. Very little about the old game carries over in terms of the environment. So that being said, given that we knew we had to break everybody's saves anyway, rather than do that multiple times in the next few weeks, we
Right.
just like, okay, we'll just do it once, right at 1.0, and it'll be kind of a big satisfying update.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think I've seen other games come out of early access and they have like a big feature that they throw into it, but generally it's the same game, and I'm really feeling like for the better. I also don't want to scare people, but for the better, the game is changing in a huge way that is going to be really meaningful and awesome for us. So I'm excited.
It's almost like a new game. To me, it feels like if you were to line this game up against the game that came out on December 16th, 2016, the game that we're going to release feels like a sequel to me.
Right.
There's that much change.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, so thanks for answering a lot of questions. Really appreciate it. This is ending up to be a pretty decently meaty Q&A, but I think we had a lot to cover and a lot of announcements and stuff today. So yes, to recap, Astroneer 1.0 is coming February 6th, 2019. We pushed back our date from the December date, but we feel like that small trade-off is going to result in a much better product, and I hope that everyone else sees that and understands that. I think most people are going to be really understanding of that. I'm excited. And we're increasing the price to $29.99. And right now we're running a sale on Steam where you can get the game for 20% off. It'll be the last time that it's probably that low. So if you have some friends that you think should get in on the 1.0 experience and get the cool suit, you should tell them about that. And yeah,
$15.99. So that'll be like the lowest price the game is going to be available for quite a while.
Yeah, we've kept it to that 20% off the entire time during early access, and now we're going to bump the price up. So I'm really excited about all of the stuff that we're putting into it, making it worth that $29.99, and then all the things we're going to put in afterwards. So I always do this disclaimer: check the roadmap. The roadmap is a pretty good, accurate description of what's happening right now and what's going to be coming out after 1.0, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. So. Okay, cool. This is the end of the Q&A. It's over. I've sufficiently borrowed Brendan from doing other important things, including recording failing, and having to re-record a bunch of stuff. I apologize.
He unlocked my desk shackle for this interview.
Yes.
I'm going to have to go put my foot back in it pretty soon.
Yes, you will. So enjoy that tea now. Okay, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. We'll see you very soon. Bye.